Hey everyone, Rusty here. For our last video, I went on and on about the importance of value when painting. If you haven't seen it or need a refresher, value just refers to how bright or dark something is. It is one way to create visually interesting work. Today we'll move on to the second way to add contrast to our work. Before I reveal what the topic of this video is, let's take a look at some images. Let's start with this image here. Before I reworked it, and you can see that the value range is okay. You can make out the light and dark, and they're placed quite appropriately. Though at the moment, the green I see here is a light green, medium green, a dark green. And it looks like back then I probably just used white to lighten and dark brown to darken. The issue with this is when we use a white, black or brown to change the value of the color, not only do we lose the saturation in the green, but we're also not taking advantage of color temperature to add variety to our base coat. So what is this color temperature I speak of? Well, colors generally evoke a sense of warmth or coolness to us. This can be highly subjective, though broadly speaking, red, orange, yellow is seen as warm, whereas blue, green and violet is generally perceived as cool. So how can we use this concept of color temperature when painting the base coat? Let's return to these before and after images. For this after image, I used yellow and blue to create my green mixture, just like before. The difference in this second attempt is that I used yellow to lighten my green instead of white. This will help to retain the saturation of the color, green specifically in this case. Not only that, but the yellow also contributes to the warmth in the highlights. For the shadows, I used blue to both darken the green and create cool shadows. Now one could say that I am using a warm highlight and cool shadow for this model. In your own models, you don't have to follow exactly what I've done here. You can do the opposite. For example, cool highlight with warm shadows. Just bear in mind that whichever option you choose, you will have to commit that for the whole model. That means avoid swapping between cool and warm highlights halfway through the model. Right, before we move on, I have to admit that I am standing on the shoulders of giants. Many years ago, I did receive incredible coaching from a hobby store in Singapore called MWorkshop. And much of what I share with you here are mixed with my own personal experiences and from interacting and learning from the many incredible artists there, including my friend and founder of MWorkshop, Bernard. If you live in Singapore and you already know this place, be sure to check out their courses which come up from time to time. It's very helpful, and to clarify once again, I'm not paid to say this. No one is paying me. I'm just speaking from the perspective as a participant in several of their courses many years ago. If you're not from Singapore but have intentions to visit there one day, try and make time to check out MWorkshop. It will be worth your time. So coming back to this work, I think it's pretty straightforward for the green armor. Yellow to warm and blue to cool. These are the same colors used to mix the green anyway, so it can't get any easier than that. So if this is your first time trying it out, then the green subject would probably be the easiest. I have to also do the same for the blue armor though. How can I approach this? Can I just do the same and add yellow for the highlight and blue for the shadow? Yes and no. It's a bit more complicated than that. If I just add yellow to the blue, I'll end up with a green, and that's a problem because the blue armor still needs to read as blue. If not, I'll not get the color scheme that I want. So remember our goal here, we want to lighten the blue and give it some warmth. Adding red will give it some warmth, but it won't lighten the blue. Instead, it will probably darken it. So I could use a cyan or lighter blue here, but I want to stick to the ideas discussed in my previous video, right? I talked about a limited palette of 3 colors. I already have red, yellow and blue, and I regard cyan as another color distinct from blue. So in order to show that we can still get a good result with just 3 colors, I will not use cyan for this particular project. So we still haven't solved the problem yet. And I know that there will be trade-offs no matter what I choose. So here's what I opted for in the end. I'll sacrifice a bit of saturation and use mostly white to lighten the blue. I'll add a tiny bit of yellow to give it some warmth, but not too much that the blue starts to look like green at a glance. And rather than going for a warm highlight, I like to think of this highlight as less cool, because the primary mixture is still blue, cool color. For the shadows, I wanted to darken and cool down the blue. Remember, warm highlights, cool shadows. But blue is already considered cool, so can we actually cool it down any further? I use red in this case to darken the blue and get a dark violet tone for the shadows. This can be highly subjective, but to me, blue is already quite a cool color, and adding red to get violet actually makes the color less cool. So one could argue that I didn't achieve a cool shadow at all. However, when compared to a very warm red or yellow colors, which is present on the gym as part of the overall diorama, I think the dark violet will still come across as cool because colors don't exist in isolation. Our brain will perceive these very same colors differently if the zaku was paired up with a blue goof or a red sazabi. So as you can see, it's not very straightforward. Sometimes you have to make certain compromises when trying to achieve your warm highlights and cool shadows. And I don't have the most experience with this, so viewers out there who are watching, you may be more knowledgeable in this area, so please comment on how you would tackle this if you were to approach this differently from me. For beginners, you don't have to worry about it too much. Just be sure to avoid having both your highlights and shadows at the same color temperature. That means warm highlights and warm shadows, or cool highlights and cool shadows, because that means losing the contrast of color temperature. With all that said, if it was a choice between contrast in value or a contrast in color temperature, it's about striking a balance, and you have to decide that for yourself. Here are the key takeaways for this video on color temperature. Color temperature is knowing that different hues evoke a subjective feeling of warmth or coolness in the viewer. The application of this knowledge comes in when you decide to go for a contrast between warm highlights and cool shadows, or vice versa, and stay consistent throughout the model. Learn how to retain the saturation of your color when you lighten or darken it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or found this video helpful. For our next video, which is also the final part of this series, we will discuss about utilizing the principle of contrast in another way. You may have noticed that the first 2 videos mostly relates to painting the base coat of our model. Can we use this principle of contrast during the weathering phase as well? Most definitely, and I'll use the arm and shoulders of the Zaku 1 to illustrate how we can do this. Well, I better get started on it, so I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.